Have you ever sat quietly in the early morning, sipping your coffee, and wondered, is this really all there is now? The long days, the slower pace, the subtle but undeniable feeling that something warm and vibrant has quietly stepped out of your life. Many people assume aging means you naturally slow down, that intimacy fades, that energy disappears like a light being dimmed. But what if that's not true? What if slowing down is not your body's decision, but a response to the messages we've been told over and over again? I'm Dr. Mary, and at 74, I've spent nearly 5 decades listening to the quiet voices of older adults, patients, friends, neighbours, who carry stories inside them that are rarely shared. Stories not of broken bones or failing organs, but of something far more fragile: the fading of closeness. I remember one couple, James and Carol, both in their early 70s. They'd been together for 46 years, but the last 5, as they told me, felt more like roommates than soulmates. They weren't fighting, they weren't unwell, they were simply drifting. James would read in his recliner. Carol would watch cooking shows. They'd still hold hands when walking into church. But the spark, the simple pleasure of brushing shoulders in the kitchen or leaning into each other at night, wasn't there anymore. When they came to me, it wasn't because of chest pain or arthritis. It was because James had said something quietly one night at dinner. "I miss you, and you're right here." And that broke something open. It's easy to assume we lose physical closeness with age because of hormones or medications or joint stiffness. And yes, all of that matters. But more often than not, the real shift begins here, in the heart, in the mind, in the space where we stop expecting more from our own bodies. And I'll admit, for years, I leaned heavily on the clinical answers: hormone therapies, blood pressure regulation, even counseling. But something still felt missing. I wasn't helping people reignite something. I was just treating symptoms. Then I started paying attention to something incredibly simple: what people were eating. Not in a diet culture way, but in a gentle, observational way. I began to notice that those who still had a glow to them, who still leaned into each other, laughed, smiled with that knowing sparkle, they had something in common. They were eating well. And by well, I don't mean expensive or trendy. I mean colourful, fresh, alive. It started with a man named Henry, who was 78 at the time. He still walked with a spring in his step, and every time I saw him, he'd say the same thing: "Doc, it's the grapes." At first, I smiled politely, but one day I asked, "What do you mean?" He told me he started eating a handful of red grapes every day after reading about their heart benefits. But something else happened. His legs felt stronger, his energy was up, and yes, he and his wife were getting along a little more intimately. That got my attention. I started digging into the research, and what I found was fascinating. Some fruits, yes, everyday fruits like grapes, cherries, even papaya, contain compounds that directly support circulation, hormonal balance, and emotional well-being. Not just theoretically, but measurably. They relax blood vessels, reduce silent inflammation, and even support better sleep, all of which play into not just feeling better, but reconnecting with yourself and with someone you love. Now, this isn't about claiming fruit is a miracle, but it is about honouring the idea that your body still wants to respond, that the systems inside you, your heart, your blood flow, your hormones, are not closed for business just because of your age. I started asking my patients gently, would you be open to trying something new? Not a pill, just a habit. And the results weren't dramatic like in the movies. They were softer, more human. A woman who started adding cherries to her nightly routine told me she was sleeping deeper and waking up feeling, in her words, like I remembered who I was. A man who'd given up on touch altogether told me his feet stopped feeling cold for the first time in years, and he finally reached for his wife's hand without hesitation. That's when I knew. Maybe the solution isn't louder. Maybe it's quieter, closer to nature. closer to what our bodies were always meant to do when given the right nourishment. And that's how this journey began, not with medicine, but with a question. What if aging didn't mean giving up on closeness? What if a bowl of fruit could help bring that warmth back one bite at a time? Frank was 69 when he first came to see me, a tall man, once full of strength from decades of working outdoors in Arizona's dry heat. He walked into my clinic with a quiet limp and a face that carried more worry than words. He said, "I don't feel my feet anymore, Doc. Not really. They're just there, cold, dull. It's like they've stopped being a part of me." It wasn't diabetes. It wasn't a spine issue. It was something I'd seen too often in older adults. Poor circulation. The kind that sneaks in slowly. You don't notice it at first. Maybe your toes feel colder. Maybe your legs ache sooner when walking. Maybe, and this one hurts the most, intimacy feels more distant, not just emotionally, but physically. Blood isn't reaching where it used to. Frank wasn't on heavy medication. He didn't want surgery. He just wanted to feel again. So I gave him something simple, half a cup of red grapes every afternoon. That's it. That's it, I said. But every day, not once in a while, let your body build the habit. 3 months later, Frank came back, not limping. His cheeks had colour. He smiled wider. "I don't know what's happening," he said, "but I feel warmer. Not just my feet. Me. I feel more like myself again." Now let me tell you what was happening behind the scenes in Frank's body. Red grapes contain a compound called resveratrol. It's a natural antioxidant found mostly in the skin of these little fruits. And while the name might sound like something out of a science book, its effect is very down to earth. Resveratrol helps relax the inner lining of your blood vessels. That means your arteries open up just a bit more, allowing blood to move more freely, more fully, more evenly. For someone like Frank, who had spent years unknowingly losing circulation in his lower body, this meant oxygen and nutrients were finally reaching his feet again. But it didn't stop there. That same flow was returning to other areas too. The heart, the brain, and yes, the pelvis. You see, after 60, it's very common for both men and women to experience a gradual decrease in sensitivity and responsiveness during moments of intimacy. It's not just about hormones, it's often about blood flow. When circulation to those areas slows down, it's harder to feel connected, harder to respond, harder to enjoy closeness. But grapes help change that. Not through force, not with side effects, but with gentle, consistent nourishment. In men, resveratrol supports the production of nitric oxide, a molecule that helps blood vessels expand during arousal. That translates to firmer, more sustainable erections without relying on synthetic medication. In women, better blood flow to the pelvic area improves sensation, comfort, and warmth. 3 things that are often lost slowly and silently with age. And the best part? Red grapes do this naturally, in harmony with your body's own rhythm. No harsh chemicals, no prescriptions, just a bowl of fruit and the decision to care for yourself, even in the smallest ways. Frank told me later that he and his wife had started walking together again in the evenings. He said, "I don't get tired as quickly, I feel more present," and she notices it too. Then he looked down and chuckled. "And the feet? They're mine again." That's what circulation does. It brings you back to yourself. It's not just about movement or touch. It's about the way your body says, "I'm still here, I still work, I still want to feel." So if you've been noticing changes in your body, cooler extremities, fatigue, a fading connection with your partner, it may not be age that's taking things away from you. It may just be that your blood isn't flowing as freely as it once did. And something as small as a handful of red grapes could be a quiet first step in changing that. Of course, red grapes aren't the only fruit with this kind of gentle power. There's another one, tart, ruby-coloured, and often overlooked. But inside, it holds protection not just for your circulation, but for your kidneys and your deepest sense of comfort. Let's talk about that one next. Elaine was 72 when she sat across from me, eyes lowered, voice barely above a whisper. "It stings," she said. "Not just physically, it hurts to pull away from someone you love." She was talking about intimacy, not the lack of love. Her eyes still lit up when she mentioned her husband of 48 years, but the discomfort that had quietly crept in, a burning sensation, a fear of infection, a hesitation that didn't used to be there. She'd been to other doctors, had rounds of antibiotics. Each helped for a while, until the symptoms came back. But no one ever stopped to ask her how it was affecting her connection, how it made her flinch when he reached for her, how it made her feel less like a partner and more like someone retreating behind a closed door. And I understood, because this is more common than most people realize. In women, especially after 60, urinary tract infections, vaginal dryness, and subtle inflammation in the pelvic region become more frequent. But what often gets missed is why. As we age, kidney function can decline gradually. Our hormones shift, and with that, the protective lining of the urinary tract thins, helpful bacteria decrease. Inflammation finds a way in, not loudly, but slowly and persistently. The result, that stinging Elaine described, that shrinking back, that quiet loss of confidence. That's when I told her about something small. Something she'd always thought of as a holiday garnish.
Cranberries!
But not the sugary canned kind. I'm talking about real cranberries, fresh, dried, without added sugar, or, most simply, unsweetened cranberry juice diluted with water. You see, cranberries are rich in natural compounds called proanthocyanidins. They help keep bacteria from sticking to the lining of the urinary tract. Imagine it like this. Instead of bad bacteria clinging on and causing trouble, cranberries help gently wash them away before they can cause harm. They also help restore a healthy balance of microbiota, the good bacteria we need to stay protected. And what that means, especially for women, is less irritation, fewer infections, more ease, and more confidence. Elaine began drinking a small glass of diluted cranberry juice each morning. She also added a few dried cranberries to her oatmeal. It wasn't a big change. It didn't feel like medicine. It felt doable. 3 weeks later, she called me. "Dr. Mary," she said, her voice brighter. "For the first time in a year, I let him hold me. And I wasn't afraid. It wasn't dramatic, but it was healing. That's what cranberries do. They don't just help prevent infection. They help rebuild trust between you and your body. They remind you that discomfort doesn't have to be your new normal. What's more, improved urinary health means better blood flow to the pelvic region. And when that happens, arousal feels more natural. Touch becomes more pleasant. That subtle wall that so many women build between themselves and closeness, it begins to soften. For men too, healthy kidney function supports stable blood pressure and nitric oxide levels, both essential for physical response. So this little fruit, it supports both sides of the connection. I've seen couples where one partner silently suffered with dryness, hesitation, or recurrent discomfort. And I've watched how something as simple as cranberry added back a layer of safety, comfort, and ease, because when there's no more fear of irritation or pain, we become more open to touch, to laughter, to rediscovering what once felt easy. So if this speaks to you, if you've been feeling hesitant or just not quite yourself in moments that used to bring joy, consider this a gentle invitation. Add a splash of cranberry to your morning. Stir some into your salad. Let your body feel supported, not forced. Sometimes the greatest form of self-care isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about tending to what's tender. And in doing so, allowing space for intimacy to return, not in a rush, but in its own time. And when that happens, when your body begins to feel safe again, something else often follows you. The kind of quiet vitality that starts deep inside and rises, not just for intimacy, but for living, for laughter, for movement, for waking up with a sense of spark again. There's one fruit in particular that speaks directly to that spark: The one that fuels testosterone, awakens circulation, and reminds your body what it was made for. Let's explore that next. George was 75 when he came to see me, sitting stiffly in the chair across from mine, eyes cast downward. He was a proud man, retired engineer, father of 4, devoted husband of 50 years. But on that day, he looked small, not in body, but in spirit. He cleared his throat and said, "I think I've lost something. Not just drive. It's like I'm not a man anymore. My wife, she's patient, but I see it in her eyes. I feel it when I pull away." I didn't rush to prescribe anything. Instead, I asked about his routines, his sleep, his eating, his energy during the day. He admitted he was always tired, had trouble falling asleep, and felt numb inside most mornings. He didn't want to try testosterone injections. He was afraid of side effects. He just wanted to feel alive again in a natural way. So I handed him a simple suggestion: half a cup of ripe papaya blended with plain Greek yogurt every morning. He raised an eyebrow. "Papaya? That soft orange fruit?" I nodded. "Exactly, but it's not just sweet. It's quietly powerful. Papaya is rich in papain, an enzyme that helps your body break down proteins, ease inflammation, and support smoother digestion. But even more important, papaya is deeply supportive of the adrenal glands, those little organs above your kidneys that regulate energy, mood, and hormone balance. When your adrenal system is stressed, everything feels heavy. You're more tired, more irritable, and your libido can drop without warning. That's why supporting this system gently can have a wide ripple effect. Papaya also contains vitamins A, C, and E and helps your liver process hormones more efficiently, especially important for men who want to support natural testosterone production without external medication. It's not a hormone supplement. It's a whole food that creates a better environment inside the body for your own hormones to do their job. George wasn't sure, but he agreed to try. 6 weeks passed. Then, one quiet Wednesday afternoon, he walked back into my office with a calm I hadn't seen in him before. "I held her hand again," he said softly, "just like I used to. No fireworks, no grand gesture, just the simple act of reaching out and the courage to do so. That's the thing about energy. It's not always about being fast or loud. Sometimes it returns like a breeze, like a subtle warmth in the chest that says, 'I'm still here.' For George, that papaya smoothie wasn't just breakfast. It was a reminder, a way to give his body what it had been quietly missing for years. Support, nourishment, a path back. And it wasn't just about testosterone. It was about confidence. His mind felt clearer, his steps lighter. He started sleeping deeper. And most importantly, he no longer shrank away from the woman who had loved him through it all. Papaya supports both men and women. In women, it helps balance estrogen levels, improve circulation to the pelvic area, and reduce dryness that often creates discomfort in later years. It also gently stimulates the thyroid and adrenal systems, reducing fatigue and enhancing resilience to stress. I've seen papaya restore a soft glow in people's cheeks, not because it's magic, but because when inflammation goes down and hormones come back into rhythm, the whole body starts to breathe easier. And it's easy to welcome into your life. You don't need to measure grams or track calories. Just slice it, blend it, or enjoy it with a spoon. Let it melt in your mouth like a small ritual of renewal. Because sometimes the path back to vitality doesn't come in a pill. It comes in a moment, a flavor, a shift so gentle you only realize it when your hands reach out again and don't pull away. Now, imagine if there was a fruit that did even more. One that not only boosted circulation and hormone balance, but also soothed your nerves and helped you sleep deeply at night. A fruit that worked on the heart and the mind, softly, quietly, steadily. That's what we'll talk about next. Let's turn to cherries. Rose and Samuel had been married for over 40 years. They raised 2 daughters, survived job losses, cared for aging parents, and weathered more than one health scare. But when they sat in my office together at 68 and 71, something had shifted, not in their love, but in how they shared it. "We don't touch anymore," Rose said quietly, "not even by accident." Samuel nodded, eyes on the floor. "We used to sit side by side and fall asleep on the couch. Now it feels like there's always a cushion between us." They weren't angry. They weren't distant in the way couples argue or grow resentful. It was gentler than that, but also sadder. They had slipped into a kind of quiet roommate rhythm, kind, polite, but missing the spark that once made them reach for each other without thinking. I asked them about their sleep. It turned out neither was sleeping well. Rose had trouble falling asleep. Samuel would wake up every few hours, and that's where I began, not with medication or hormones, but with something simple, even tender. I suggested cherries. They blinked. "Cherries?" Samuel asked. "You mean the fruit?" "Yes, cherries, but not just any kind. Dark red, fresh or frozen, eaten in the evening like a ritual, not just for the taste, but for what they quietly do inside your body. Cherries are rich in anthocyanins, a powerful antioxidant that helps reduce inflammation in your arteries and increases the natural production of nitric oxide, which allows blood to flow more freely. That improved circulation matters, not just for your heart or your brain, but for your most intimate areas, areas that, with time and stress, often receive less blood flow, leading to numbness, dryness, or reduced sensitivity. But there's more. Cherries also contain natural melatonin, the hormone your brain needs to fall asleep and stay asleep. And that's where real healing begins, because deep sleep is one of the most overlooked factors in hormonal health. When you sleep well, your stress hormones decrease, your reproductive hormones regulate, and your emotional openness, your ability to connect, feel, and respond, starts to return. As I often tell my patients, a rested heart is a softer heart, and soft hearts reach for each other more easily. So Rose and Samuel began eating a small bowl of cherries each evening after dinner. At first, it was just a sweet way to end the day, but slowly things began to shift. They began falling asleep faster, waking up less. And then one night, Rose rolled over in bed and touched Samuel's hand without thinking. She said it felt warm, familiar, but also new. "I had forgotten what it was like to want to reach out," she told me later, "but my body remembered, and it didn't feel like effort." Samuel, always the quieter one, smiled when I asked how he felt. I didn't even realize I had started breathing easier around her again. I think my heart just felt less guarded. That's the quiet power of cherries. They don't force change. They create space for it. They improve circulation, not just to the body, but to the bond. And when you sleep well, when blood flows freely and your brain gets a chance to reset, closeness feels natural again. For many couples, that simple evening habit becomes more than just fruit in a bowl. It becomes a signal to slow down together, to sit a little closer, to feel safe in the same room again. And I've seen it over and over. When sleep improves, when inflammation eases, when touch becomes comfortable again, desire returns. Not the fiery kind of youth, but the kind that lasts. The kind that says, "I still see you, and I still want to reach for you." So if you've been feeling the space grow wider between you and the person you love, if your body feels tired, if your emotions are just slightly out of reach, try this. Share cherries in the quiet of the evening. Let them soothe you, soften you, slow you down, and trust that the heart, when gently supported, knows how to remember love. Of course, knowing what to eat is just the beginning. The next step, maybe the most important, is figuring out how to bring these changes into your real daily life. Not as a strict plan or overwhelming routine, but as small, meaningful steps you can start today. Let's explore exactly how to do that next. You don't have to change everything, not tonight, not even tomorrow. Sometimes all it takes is one soft, quiet step in the direction of your own care. A single piece of fruit on a plate. A moment of stillness before the day begins. A gentle reminder that your body, despite the years, despite the noise, still hears you. I know some days feel heavier than others. You might sit by the window in the morning light, sipping tea, wondering if it's too late to feel different. Too late to feel wanted, or warm, or awake in your own skin again. But I promise you, something small can begin again. You don't need to force it. You don't need to be anyone else. Just reach for one thing that speaks to you. Maybe it's red grapes that make your hands feel warmer by nightfall. Maybe it's papaya, soft and bright, reminding your stomach and your soul that nourishment can be simple. Maybe it's cranberries clearing more than just your body. Maybe clearing a space for you to feel safe again. Or cherries, sweet and quiet, giving your heart permission to sleep and then to open. We never know which day will be the one that changes something. Sometimes it's the smallest thing, a bowl left on the kitchen counter, a shared bite, a laugh you haven't heard from your partner in months. Sometimes it's the way someone reaches for your hand, not because they have to, but because the warmth came back. I remember just last week sitting on the porch with my husband. He's 80 now, eyes softer than they were in our younger days. He didn't say a word, just reached across the table and held my hand. Not with urgency, not with need, but with something better, presence. And I thought to myself, this is why we care for our bodies, not to live forever, but to feel life fully while we're still here. So, if something you heard today felt familiar, if you found yourself remembering a time when closeness came easier or feeling the ache of missing it, know that you're not alone. We've all left things unsaid. We've all waited too long for a feeling to return, but maybe, just maybe, it starts again with something simple. If you're still with me, if this story felt like yours in some small way, you're welcome to leave a note below. A word, a memory, a moment. And if you'd like to walk this path of rediscovery together, gently, without pressure, you're always welcome here. Strong After 60 isn't just a channel, it's a space to remember how much you still have to give. And sometimes it all begins with one quiet bite and a choice to feel again.